to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming this evening. Nice chilly evening. So do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
A motion by Gary, here, second. Second by Ron. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Public comment? Okay, thank you. Consent items?
I would ask to pull the retirements, number 3, C3 off to act on it separately.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the consent items with the removal of the retirements till afterwards?
Motion.
Motion by Joe,
Second.
second by Gary. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, retirements, Michaeline?
Well, as I think we all agree that it's nice to recognize our employees and staff who've been with us for until their retirement, and we had 2 retirements here, so if you guys had a chance to see that, I would introduce the resolution of commendation on the retirement here, the first of Georgia Rabine. Whereas Georgia has been a part of the, and this is a motion, so I'm introducing this resolution as a motion. Whereas she's been part of the Houston Public School District and Minnesota Virtual Academy family for 14 years as a respected special ed teacher from MNBA Elementary, and is one of the most warm, gentle professionals one will ever meet, a true professional who always views things in the most positive way, and the type of role model who aims always to turn lemons into lemonade. And whereas Georgia always brought out the best in her students by guiding them with the patience of a saint, and has always taken an active interest in each student as a unique, valued individual, and has always made it her priority to really get to know each of her students and their families. And whereas Georgia will be remembered as a cornerstone of special ed at MNBA K-5, who was innovative in converting traditional special education instruction to delivery in the online world, an extremely patient, caring, and supportive special education teacher, and by her students who say their time with her was often the highlight of their week, and by her peers and supervisors as one who earned their respect and inspired them every day. Therefore, be it resolved that the Houston School Board wishes to thank Georgia for her many dedicated years of service and wishes her all the very best in her retirement.
Motion.
I'll second that.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, I didn't, this was the principal, Angela and Corinne. With it being summer, there wasn't a lot of time to solicit, so these comments are certainly not by me, but by the people who work with her, so.
Very good.
Yeah, very
She
good.
will definitely be missed.
She's a good job.
Yeah. Okay, and likewise, a resolution of commendation upon the retirement of Dione Show. I'll enter this and move for its adoption. Whereas Dione has been part of the Houston Public School District and Houston High School family as a special ed teacher for 26 years. And whereas Dione has been a constant and compassionate advocate for students who learn differently and has always demonstrated great care for students and their parents. And whereas Dione willingly supported every student to the same level every year, no matter how heavy the caseload, and demonstrated a put the students' needs first mindset, as evidenced by the number of times she gave up her own lunch period to help students, and assisted in many other areas to help Houston High School fulfill its mission. And whereas Dione will be missed by her many students and their parents, and by her colleagues, peers, and the entire educational team of Houston High School, now therefore be it resolved that Houston School Board wishes to thank Dione Show for her amazing 26 years of service and wishes her all the very best in her retirement.
We have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Joe seconded.
Yeah.
Joe did?
Yeah.
It's a race. It's a
No,
race.
she made the motion.
Yeah.
That's right.
We're good.
Okay.
Discussion?
Again, 26 years, that's,
Yeah.
she's been a face to this building for a long time.
Yeah.
And they're both in areas, well, they're in the same area, and it's really difficult to replace.
Yeah, it's a tough,
Very,
We're fortunate to have them for that long.
yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Definitely, thank you for that.
field sometimes.
Mhm.
Our very sincere thanks to them.
Oh,
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thanks again, Michael, for
and
that.
we do have the traditional bowls to give them for their years of service. So we just have to figure out a way to, Diane will be a little easier because she's just over in Caledonia, but we'll have to do a road trip for George's.
Well, I know that you, within the school, always recognize employees and their years of service, but it's sometimes, you know, the public recognition of those things is not as easy.
And just as a board, so you know, I take the resolution with all the, who made the motion and the second and the date, and then I put that in an envelope with the bowl. So
Oh.
they've got the whole
The package.
resolution
That's
there
nice.
with it.
That's
So,
nice.
yeah, so thank you for adding to that.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So,
Again, that was Todd and Corinne that helped out.
okay. Thanks again, Michaeline.
Mhm.
Discussion items, MNVA staff and student handbooks.
You have the summary of changes to the handbook. The other thing, on Thursday, I received an update from MDE testing. And the first thing was the legislative change that as of, and I didn't see this in the legislative updates from MSBA, MREA, or MASA, but legislatively, we have to have the official MDE opt-out form in our student handbooks, the opt-out form for for the MCA test. So that's something, Todd has already amended his, so that, I don't know if that got amended in SharePoint yet or not.
No, I didn't get notice of that.
Okay, and, so the handbooks you're seeing right now will have, for the August 3rd meeting where you're going to approve them, hopefully, by that meeting, they will have that opt-out form as part of the handbook, as required by legislature.
So with regard to the MNVA handbooks, I haven't had a chance to read through all these. There was a lot of homework for us this time, but I did glance at them and started to look at them, and this kind of goes for all of the handbooks, or most of them, I should
Kids
say.
are big hunters. They go on.
Apologize. Didn't scare anybody.
I lost track. Go ahead.
So with regard to the MNVA handbooks, I think they look really nice. They have a very consistent layout. It has this escalation matrix that you said needed to be included, and it's the same matrix in all three of them. And then it's followed by the same start pages, a common MNVA mission, followed by the district's mission, vision, and aims. I really appreciate that. I was curious why one of them, Laura is the assistant or principal.
Laura Galick is the assistant high school principal.
Okay, so the first page is different, between the high school and the middle and elementary. And the first page of the elementary and middle has Angela Specketer and John Paetto,
Yes.
and the high school one doesn't have anybody. So
Oh, okay.
it's just a
Okay.
matter of consistency. It looks really nice. And I know that I think Angela worked to try and get those uniform with district policies and so forth.
Yep. Yep, okay.
Plus reading the highlighted. Thank you for putting yourselves, whoever did all the work to present the handbooks, from the person who is reading them to find the highlighted changed areas and the summary page. It just made my job a lot easier to do. And so I appreciate the work on the part of the principals and their administrative assistants in doing that.
And I think Angela did this one because the administrative assistant that had always helped is no longer with us. That's Angela Stigler, who's now been promoted within K-12.
If we have other questions or comments, should we contact you on these before we act to approve these?
Yes.
Like I saw a change in the Houston High School handbook that probably should have been the same change in the Houston Elementary handbook, and I didn't see it in the elementary one, so I'll just alert you to those little, they're minor things, but.
Okay.
Okay. So you wanna go like through each one of the handbooks, or does that cover all of them? Okay.
Are there other things, with the Houston High School staff, we've also got the coaches handbook there, and the student handbook, so there are 3 handbooks there, because I know that, we've been asked to provide that coaches handbook for you every year as well, so you can see what's going on with the coaching, requirements, the coaching expectations.
I read through that and I thought, wow, we put a lot on our coaches. We have a lot of expectations on all our professional staff, but
Yes, we do.
the public ought to know we have expectations and we strive to have everyone aspire to meet those.
Mm-hmm.
So is there anything else on the other?
Rick did want you to know on the Houston Elementary one, they're working at getting PBIS. Their PBIS, they're the hurricane force.
Oh, is that what that is? Okay, I saw the force and I didn't know what that was.
The bands of success in the high school for PBIS are dedicated, encouraging, caring, and S stands for epic fail. Yes, S stands for
Smart.
what?
Smart.
No, I should know what it is. Anyway, it's I always said they're stacking the decks.
Or-
DECS.
Or what?
What's the S stand for?
Enforce or?
In the Houston one,
Bands, in the bands, spiral bands of success.
is it safety? Is it right behind you? Can you see? Safe, that's what it is. Okay. S stands for safe.
We wouldn't have gone any
And
farther.
so, with PBIS, you have the little kind of buzzwords so you remember what your focus is, and for the elementary school, theirs is force. And so the F stands for force ourselves on respect for community excellence. Focus ourselves on respect for community excellence. So that's their positive behavior is a force.
Force be reckoned with.
Yeah, I think it's good. We needed something good to warrant replacing the ICUs that used to be there and worked so well. So,
Okay, that's it, that right now? And then if we have changes, let them know. Okay.
please.
Hiawatha Valley Ed District Service Agreement.
This will be on the August 3rd meeting for approval. And this is just the basic service agreement that they're going to be providing our special ed oversight. And it defines what the services are, it defines what their basic services are, and it defines what the extra services are that we have to pay above and beyond for. So this, I will have the entire contract with this. One thing to note in the contract, there will be a fee assigned in there for data coach / data analyst. And that is a position that a few years ago was filled by Dan Heisen. And HVED was asked to find someone to fill that position again. So we have someone really helping us not only dig into the data, but also what does that mean? how do we address that? If we've got a low point in our data score, what does that really mean? What can we do to improve that struggle that our students are having? So with math, if we dig into it and we can really see, you can dig down quite deep into the strands if you basically have the time and the know-how to dig into that, the testing data. And so that's what this person will be charged to do. And that is not covered by special ed funding. And so most of what we pay to HVED is covered by special ed funding, so we get the reimbursement. That is not a reimbursable fund, so that will be an extra cost.
Do you know what that's gonna be at?
For Houston, the cost of that will be, I think it was estimated at 13,000.
A year?
Yeah. Yeah,
Is-
because of the size of our school and the salary and benefits of that person.
Do our MNBA students get services from HVED that this is, I mean, we're paying for student numbers, right?
Right,
So
we're paying for student numbers, and so then I said if we're paying that much for it, then this person will need to be assigned to Houston and the MNBA staff at least a half a day a week. And I said, if we've got that support, then I can, it can serve as our test data and can work with our PLCs, and I will make sure that we get the full bang out of the buck, because that is a huge
Yeah, I
expenditure.
was gonna say, it's a pretty good chunk of change for that little
especially
bit of
looking
time.
at the contract that we pay HVED. In the past, did we pay an extra fee?
No,
For Dan? Oh, yeah,
Oh, okay,
oh, yeah.
comparable?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a continuation of a service that we have
It's
had.
it's a renewal after a lapse, yes.
Okay, any other questions on that?
How are things, you know, with some of the, we've been part of some information from you, information sharing that Houston may be the district that bears the brunt of some cost because of the size of our district within the education district. And I'm just wondering what you're watching for. This is a year-long thing that we approve next month, and you know, who's pushing the pencil on where's the tipping point where it's better for us to spend that money. And I know it's impossible to provide all those services, but at some point when we're carrying a number of other school districts within the ed district, it's a concern.
We're not large enough to really go it alone without that, the pool services. We're not, we are not large enough to really fund our own.
But we're gonna get pinched for the biggest
Yeah, I think
portion
if-
of the membership.
Yeah, it would be nice to know is if we're getting our, like you said a minute ago, our bang for our buck in comparison to what we were paying in the past to what we're going to be paying because of the changes in the membership.
Mm-hmm.
You know, are we getting more for it? You know, or are we just getting what we got 5 years ago and we're just paying twice as much? You know what I'm getting at?
Well, we're not paying twice as much
No,
as
but
we
whatever
did
the
5
number
years
would be,
ago.
you know, but what I'm saying, whatever the price may have been
I did sit
changed.
down with our new, we have a new special ed director, the assistant special ed director, who has on his caseload quite a few schools, Houston being one of them, La Crescent is the other. His office is in La Crescent, but I, as we sat down and talked for 2 hours, I made it known that Houston had the largest school with MNBA, and I said if you would like a desk here, so he could spend ample time here, I could definitely arrange that for him, because we need to see the presence more. So that's,
So what do you say?
he was all for it. He wants to, he might be coming, if he can work it out, to the Tuesday breakfast and sit down and meet with the special ed teachers from MNVA for breakfast and really get to know them on a one-to-one basis. And then there will be different times he will meet with them throughout the year, probably virtually, but he has to be part of those meetings. He has to really understand what it is to be a special ed teacher and to provide special ed services in an online world. Because
I
we
would
can't
expect that. I would
we
expect
can't
him to
afford
step
the
up and
learning
show
curve.
his
Yeah.
presence. So we support you on that, or I would. I
Mhm.
think the rest of the board would as well.
Well, just keep us posted on, to make sure we, like Michaeline said, that we're getting our fair share of the services provided.
It's gotten better since Deb Marcotte has been there, and I've also gotten pushier. With her predecessor, we were not getting our fair share, and it's getting better.
Okay. Anybody have any more questions? Okay, SBA membership.
This is, once again, based on pupil units. And it's one where you just kind of take a deep breath, but we are definitely getting, for all the fact that we only pay $675 for the policy service. I can't imagine, that one policy that we wrote that MSBA did not have, that we had to get legal fees. With the legal fees, that one policy ended up being over $2,000. So this is definitely a cost-effective way to go.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on that membership? Okay,
Oh, no, but
Oh, you're
they
way
did it.
ahead, so.
Am I ahead of myself?
Yeah,
Yes.
you're a month ahead, that's okay.
Yeah,
Oh, well,
Board self-evaluation.
just in case I won't be here next.
Oh, we'll make a note of that.
Thank you, Ron.
You know you can go it.
Yeah, appreciate that.
okay. Next up with the board self-evaluation, in looking at that, I've got the, do you have the color-coded one there, or?
No, I never got that.
Okay, did everybody get? Yes, yep,
I didn't.
okay. So with the, looking at this, there are 5 standards, and our best standard is standard 5, where it's as far as, and this is all of our perception of it, that it's the engaging the local community and representing the values and expectations they hold for their schools. That's where, as a group, we feel we're doing the best. And then standard 3 is number 2, where we're creating conditions for district-wide student and staff success. And then standard 3 is also right about that 80% mark, as far as 80% most or always. And that's setting and communicating high expectations for student learning with clear goals and plans for meeting those. Where we seem to stumble a bit was in providing conduct and ethics of providing responsible school district governance, and in standard 4, where it's accountability, holding school district accountable for meeting student learning expectations. What does that mean? I have no idea what questions actually tied to which standards, and nor do I really remember each of the questions. And so we could try to wade through this, but I'm not sure how much value that would have.
Was there any huge negatives? Was there anything that was off the charts?
Accountability, we only feel that we're about 58% accountable, according to the standards on accountability, which, as this group, if we don't feel we're having accountability, that that's probably something we need to dig into.
And it may not be that, it may be a better understanding on what the question is. You know what I mean? I think there may have been a,
Yeah, what exactly does that
you
mean?
know,
That's just it. I don't know. Because I don't remember.
Well, I've just sat through things like this where, I mean, when you emailed out these results, MSBA had along with it a list of possible ways to approach this.
Right.
That it's impossible to draw conclusions. So they said, look at it and what do you see in the data? What does it suggest to you? Because everybody could take, so you
Right.
learn something just by seeing how other people view these things. I think it sometimes still leaves you wondering questions, but at least it's a process by which you understand how everybody is looking at the data, which may be different than the way than I'm looking at the data. And then it suggested, so it's like, what do we see? What does the data suggest? Can we identify goals from the list? Like you just said, if, accountability is the one, maybe that's the one we want to set a goal about. And then build a couple of goals. I mean, we can do that, or we can have MSBA come in and that's what they'll do for us,
Right.
right? So, to me, one of the big questions I don't understand how with 8 people responding, we get these percentages. But that's just me. That was my first big question. I'm like, that does not jive.
Except
53%,
there
yeah.
were
Yeah.
there were multiple questions, and so if there were 5 questions that dealt with standard 1, and you're looking at, then there are 40 possible. Or if there were 6 questions, now you're looking at 42. With 42, you can get the 3%.
It's worse than the genetic code.
Well,
It's like a triplet code.
I don't think there's a double helix involved here, but
So if you request it, they would tie into what questions were towards each.
And I'm not sure what their 2 to 3 hour in-service, that's when they provide the more in-depth individualized data and reports designed for your board's ongoing improvement. So what I see is that we've got 3 options. We can look at this and say, isn't that nice, we did that. And then it doesn't get us anything. Number 2, we could say, we did this, we really want to dig into it, but we don't know what to do. We'll hire MSBA for their 2 to 3 hour in-service. That 2 to 3 hour in-service is $950. Or, number 3, we can say, having the conversation about these things, if we could just figure out if we could get the list of questions that were asked originally, and we could do that ourselves as far as digging in and going through it and having a board retreat with us, just kind of going through the questions and having those conversations as far as where we think we are, where we think we need to be, that's another option. Will that get us anywhere? I'm not sure. It'll get us farther than option 1, where we're not doing anything. Will we actually know where they feel the analysis is? I'm not sure. It would be cheaper than the 950, but I'm not sure if we're at the place where we feel that the 950 would be worth it, because we really need to dig into this. That's kind of,
thoughts anyway?
Yeah.
I'd favor having them come and walk us through it, so that we're not sort of butting our heads and coming away with, well, we all agree to disagree, or we all agree that we're confused. And we might not get any further, but I think we're overdue for doing a process like this. That's fine.
I would, that would be my suggestion, just because I feel like, I think some of the questions on there, I don't think some of the answers were, people might not have understood the question properly, for whatever reason might have been, who knows? And maybe somebody understood it, wrong or whatever, and I think if we do it ourselves, even if we had the questions, we maybe get the same result. Or if we have somebody outside come in and say, well, this is really the direction you should be going, it would be worth it. And you're right, we haven't done one in a while,
been quite a
As
while.
far as outside source wise, which I don't think it hurts. But that would be mine. I don't know about yours, Gary or Josh.
Yep,
You
so they
guys.
come here, you know.
Yeah, it's a 2 hour thing. It's
So
not.
what are we getting out of this? I know
Quality
we
of
get the
time
answer to the
together,
question,
too.
what are we gonna do with it?
Well, and that's just
Yeah.
it, once what they will come in, at my understanding, when emailing back and forth with Gail, what they will do is lead us through that whole process, the deep dig into the data, having those conversations, and then help us create those 2 to 3 goals for the board that we can look at next year at this time to say, okay, these are the goals, how are we doing on that? Are we improving? Are we improving how we're working together as a group? How are we improving how we're working for the district? Because at the end of the day, it comes down to how well we're doing for the district and the community.
I'm sure that whoever they provide will be helpful and entertaining. When we went to phase one, everyone that we listened to had great points and we had a lot of experience and good sense of humor and such.
It's always important.
It's always a benefit, yeah.
And good speakers.
So, Joe,
Joe?
I mean, I know that you've been, I mean, I've been advocating for us to do something as a
Right.
board, and if we
And
come away with a
I'm not
goal.
against it, I just wanna know what we're doing.
Okay.
And
That's
I think
why I
part
wanna
of
know
that.
what you're thinking,
Yeah, that's
what,
what
do
I'm
you think
saying.
there is value, or what
Well,
is the value in a
do,
board coming
and
up with a?
You guys
goal?
saying having them come here in this meeting is fine, but I just wanna know what are we gonna get, our goal is to come up with 3 goals or something like Corinne said, and that's what we're gonna work at, right?
Right.
That's-
I mean, the whole objective
It's
is.
not
you
just
take
to
that.
talk,
Right.
not
Right.
just to get together.
I think
and
we
talk.
would get farther ahead by having someone else
Well, I
do
agree
it
with
than
that, too.
us. Otherwise, it would be just
Okay.
a crapshoot. So.
But it's also, if we're gonna do this, it's an all-in,
Mhm.
as far as, because if one person's not there, it's like a stool without a leg,
Mhm.
and we need all the legs there for this to stand up.
Ron, you have any problem?
No,
Gary? Josh, everybody
You're in
in?
favor?
Yeah, we're on.
yeah, I'd be in favor of it. I mean,
I'd say let's take a
some of
look.
those questions were like, you know, taking a multiple test questions where you didn't know any of the answers.
Yeah.
So you just put something down.
But I think that's that's fodder for a
It's-
conversation. Should
Yeah,
should
so-
there be more, should we be more aware of that, or shouldn't we? I mean, and just make that a goal. It's like, are those things that a board should be aware of? A high functioning board, should they be aware of those things or not? And at what level? I mean, I think some of that might come out.
Mhm.
And we should be thankful that they're gonna come into a good situation, not something,
Yeah.
you know, in disarray, and I'm sure those folks get entered into a lion's den at times.
They've been here in Lions Dens in the past.
So they'll probably be pleasantly surprised, you know.
Exactly.
And I do,
Well,
the
I
fact
need to
that we've
see.
got, because in looking at this, blue and green
Mhm.
are good, and yellow is not so bad. And because yellow is, yeah, some of the time. Red is the problematic, and you can see that on this, there's not much red. So that's a positive. I don't want anyone to think it's doom and gloom. But
And I'd be saying, why aren't they all green?
So,
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
Well-
if we're a high functioning board, we should be, you know, if these are appropriate board areas, and maybe they're not, maybe the board doesn't feel they are, so
Right.
we should figure
and
that out.
unless we get a clear understanding on the questions, we can't make that determination. So,
I think we'd get insights of having somebody else come.
yeah.
Who doesn't have a,
are there dates that do
Agenda.
not work?
Like
Sundays.
Sunday.
Humor's good, humor's good. Okay, are there, do we wanna go with like, to see if they could come in Thursdays, like August 10th? Or,
On the week of August, yeah.
You are.
Yeah, work.
okay,
Maybe you should find out
Why
when
don't you
they're
find out
available, and you
what-
could do
yeah,
a doodle
right.
poll or
I,
something.
okay,
Yeah.
I'll
Like-
do it.
I would say after mid-August, just with things coming up. For me anyway, I don't know about you guys, but
I'm good after the first week.
yeah. the middle to the end, after there and see what they have.
Okay.
Okay.
I will do that.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
All business items for discussion and approval, computers for business lab.
We've talked,
We have a motion? We're approving this?
yeah.
Do we have a motion on the computer for the business lab?
I'll make a motion.
Joe said motion. Second by Gary. Okay, discussion.
Total price would be $22,059.75. That's for the 25 computers and then the 25 monitors. What we have in there now is failing and not able for Ryan to teach the classes that he really needs to teach. So it needs to be upgraded. In talking to, I've got Joe Ruskey's recommendation on there as well, as the IT person. These are all done with his recommendation, and there is a subgroup that meets on site bi-weekly during the school year, and that subgroup has been meeting since, people have changed, but it's since 2009 that subgroup has been meeting either weekly or bi-weekly. And so then that's where the discussions are as far as what's needed, what's out there, the research is done in that subgroup. So it's not like this is coming out of the blue.
Well, my frustration with that is, going back to 2009, we had board membership named to be on that committee. And with the exception possibly of, I think, perhaps Mimi being involved with the website when there was a goal after a survey about doing website upgrades and the logo and colors and so forth. I don't know of a board member that's been involved in that district technology committee, or has been. I haven't been invited to those meetings. Gary, you were the person appointed. I look back through old minutes. In 2009, Eric Bartleson asked for someone, and it was you that was named, and he didn't get a report from you if you were at those. I just think we've said that we had a meeting last year about what school districts have board representation. It's not a board committee, but it's board representation on a committee, tracking this technology stuff. And I think we have asked for it, and I don't think it's been there. So I'm not saying that this group hasn't done their homework. I'm just saying it has not been communicated to and through the board.
So what we need
With
with that
the
is.
district technology plan, there's a district technology committee and then the subcommittee. And the subcommittee is the one that was meeting bi-weekly. The subcommittee is the one that's been meeting since 2009. The district committee, the district tech committee, met 3 times this year.
We didn't ever talk about choices of hardware or software. We did surveys for the Future Ready site. There was no conversation, except for the last meeting, the most recent meeting that committee met, unless I missed meetings, but I don't think I did. So it may be that there's a subcommittee, but doesn't that have to go then to the district? I mean, if we're gonna make a recommendation on computers for the business lab, the district tech advisory committee should also be aware of those conversations, whether they're part of that. They should be aware of those conversations, I would think. I'm just asking. I'm just looking for more communication on technology decisions.
Well, I think since technology is a big part of our school, period, I think, there should be something like when we do our regular, facility committee meeting, finance committee meeting, that type of thing. You're gonna have just to keep people up to date on what's happening, what we're looking at, maybe down the road. I wanna continue our school working, you know, for this year and future. But I think what Michaeline is saying, you know, like just for maybe everybody on the board is a clearer understanding, you know, of where we're spending it. Because I know it came up during our finance meeting committee, you know, as far as what we're gonna do with that money, that was kind of a hot button. And maybe if we are communicated throughout the year as far as what's happening, that would be an easier pill to swallow when it comes up to, okay, we've been talking about this, you know, anybody have any questions, and this is why,
So
instead of just,
the way I understand, you have a district technology committee. Do we have a board member on that, right?
2.
Two. And those are Michaeline and Mimi, right?
Yep.
And then there's a subcommittee, what's that called?
It's just a subcommittee of the district tech committee.
Subcommittee of the district.
That's our IT person, our curriculum person, the tech integrationist, the principals, and the superintendent.
And their role is more like the day-to-day maintenance or replacement of worn-out computers.
The grunt work as far as the research and figuring out what's working, what's not working. If it's not working, what should we do? What are our options?
Okay, but they're probably would be feeding off the district technology main focus, right? I mean, the 5-year plan or 3-year plan or whatever they got. They're working off of that, right? That way.
Are you saying they don't necessarily report back to that?
Well, I think we're still trying to get this up and running in an effective way. I'm just trying to say, going forward, how can we make this a better process going forward? I'm not trying to look back. I'm not trying to question decisions that have been made. I'm trying to improve because if there are things like, okay, how did that work out? You know, so that the district tech committee can say, well, how are these new computers and the new server working, and just be aware of it. And if there are problems, then we need to know in advance that we're gonna redirect or make a different decision down the road because it's not working or it is working.
So the process would be to you create a certain budget amount for day-to-day maintenance, or throwaway computers, and then the large spectrum is the servers and where are we gonna be 3 years? Maybe it isn't Chromebooks or something else based on what the district technology committee states, right?
Yeah, I mean, if the whole district tech committee says, you know, our Chromebooks are not doing the job and they're getting broken and we'd rather go iPads or there's the next new thing, we have that communication going.
Right, so there'd be a cutoff sometime. You may have a big expenditure to make that switch down the road, but it would
you're
slowly,
aware.
You'd be aware of that.
So I'm just saying, how can we make the process work better going forward?
I think this is a good start right here, just communicating it, that we should.
So you're saying that there should be a school board member that's sitting in on that subcommittee?
Well, not necessarily, but I would like to know when the subcommittee meets and is talking about like Chromebooks or, you know, choices of what are we gonna bid, what do we need in the library, what do we need for our MNBA students, or what do we need for the business lab, or what do we need for whatever, that information is then communicated to the district tech committee when they meet, and then they can bounce back some questions about, you know, well, what are you looking at, and give us a couple options, and then we're the advisory committee to go to the board, and we'll say, well, we looked at some options and this was deemed the best option for these reasons. It just is part of the process.
Do they have notes from that subcommittee meeting? Minutes?
We haven't been taking minutes. We could.
I mean, that'd be the easiest. Give the minutes to do you agree, Michaeline? If you have
Yeah,
minutes,
I mean, and then if there are questions, or, you know, sometimes it's just, okay, you looked at this one, did you look at anything else? Or, you know, what's the justification for this one and not this one?
And that may be in the
And
minutes.
that may be in there.
the minutes, and that would be a concern.
Right, exactly. So I would just ask going, you know, starting up with the next school year, that you create some process that is a flow of communication that provides us that information, unless we're asking for, if we're not asking for information justifiably. I would like to know why the board isn't entitled to that information either.
So do they meet like a first and a third of a certain day of the week, or is it pretty?
Yeah, it was on Tuesday afternoons.
Well, maybe the district tech advisory committee should have a standing meeting once a month or once a quarter. maybe they're the ones, and then you guys can meet the subcommittee can meet as often and as necessary, but the district tech advisory committee
Needs to have
Needs-
standing.
needs to have a standing date to sort of be able to ask questions or to receive, what's the
Information.
ongoing
So then they could keep the board
conversation.
up to date on what's happening like every other committee.
Mhm.
So, why are we looking at setting up something like that for this next school year? Okay, any other questions? Good information, Mike, Joe, thanks. So, we have a motion, we have a second, any further discussion on the computers for the business lab? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Chromebooks,
Okay, that's,
we have a motion to approve the Chromebooks purchase.
So moved.
Motion by Gary, second by Ron. Discussion. I know this is another hot, it was a discussion we've had in the past.
and it was, there were a lot of questions raised at the district technology advisory committee. And so we went back to the drawing board mainly because we know we needed some new Chromebooks. And so we didn't go with our first plan, we devised another plan to try to find a way to have fewer Chromebooks. And we will keep track of the damage that is done. However, there are Chromebooks at the elementary school where they've reached end of life in February. We don't have Chromebooks at Summit, and they need them in order to do their online classes. And now that we have a really solid wireless system in there, they can more easily access with Chromebooks. Also at the high school, instead of having Chromebook carts in all the rooms and having teachers monitor them, we'll still let 9th through 12th graders check out their Chromebooks in the morning. But then we'll have just 7th and 8th graders having Chromebook carts in classrooms. And so that will take 4 Chromebook carts, and it will take some logistics to figure out where cart 1 goes so that the 7th graders get their Chromebooks for that cart 1. And so it will probably be different students because of the science room. In Mrs. Curry's room, she's got 7th and 8th graders, so she would probably keep 1 cart for 4 hours. So 7th and 8th graders would use that 1 cart. And so then it's where it's gonna take some logistics. Todd is willing to sit down with the teachers and help them. And we also have students who are looking for that half credit as far as a TA, so we could have TAs that at the end of an hour know that they need to come and get the Chromebook cart and take it around. So we have devised different plans for doing it, and so that would require fewer Chromebooks and having a cart in every room. But going without them at this point is not an option.
No, that's.
What kind of warranty or guarantee do you get? Is there any kind of service plan, or when you say those that do get abused or have some, are a lemon or?
Well, we haven't had any that are because if they're a lemon to begin with, you know that with a Chromebook, you send it back, you get the new one because this Chromebook never worked. As far as broken screens, if we know it was the student who inflicted the damage, then Todd has asked that student to pay. It's the reason we wanted to change the way we did it in the high school as opposed to the elementary school. The elementary school has a fraction of the damage that we have at the high school. And the damage that's happening in the elementary is typically when, now that all the classes have carts, back when they were piled, there was more damage. Now that they all have carts, the damage that's really being done at the elementary, from what I'm told by staff, is happening more when the kids are taking their Chromebooks down to the library for their media time. As they're carrying them, they have to just remember that they need to shut the lid and carry them carefully.
Kids in high school are abusive. I mean, it's
Well,
just-
and the kids in high school, we tell them as they're walking down the hall to shut the lid,
Yeah.
don't walk with trying to type at the same time because it's easy, but
Very-
it's also when they have them all the time, if they don't need them for a class, they whip them in their locker. The Chromebooks are a computer, you can't stack your history book on top of it, you can't stack your calculus book on top of your Chromebook, it's not gonna handle it. And you certainly can't put it on the slanted top of your locker and expect it to stay there without sliding down and hitting the floor.
So in the 9 through senior, they're giving to the student, right?
Yes, they come in here and check them out in the morning, and Cindy Flanton does a phenomenal job of monitoring that and keeping track of it and making sure they're all plugged in and all getting charged.
Okay, that's all I got.
Okay. Any other discussion, any other questions on it?
So with the kids in Summit, how many students in Summit also take classes in the high school?
The kids in the high school, 9 through 12, if they're taking, they would have checked theirs out in the morning here if they're taking 1 or 2 classes. The 20 computers are just for the full-time Summit kids.
That is a long time to, how many do we have enrolled in Summit? I guess that raises the question.
Full-time, I think right now we are at 16. And that's full-time, that's not the incidental kids that are taking a
So there's
class
more
or
than
2.
16 that are down there sometimes. Okay.
Sometimes, yes.
Okay.
I was
Any
just
other?
trying to figure out how many were carrying it, we're getting a second Chromebook when they already had one,
Oh,
so.
Yeah, no,
I see.
And then this was a topic we talked about at the District Tech Advisory Committee quite extensively, including a question about whether the students should be signing some kind of agreement, especially if we're gonna have 9 through 12th graders having their own. And I believe Joe said that most of the schools he works with, they do have some kind of agreement. It's, it raises questions, but it's something I would like that committee to look into possibly having some sort of documentation. I'd also like that committee to look at when should we send Chromebooks home? They are a tool, they're a textbook. What do we need to have in place to start sending these out of the school and home? So those are the kind of things I would like the District Tech Advisory Committee to be developing and be aware of, because because I think it's appropriate. So.
Okay. Any other discussion items? Is there a motion or a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Library computers.
okay, for the, I don't have a sheet for that.
This is all I have.
Okay, there.
These are just replacing ones that we need to replace?
No, this is, the quote for the library computers. The computers in here are Chrome boxes. And there are certain parts of the online classes that do not work with Chrome boxes. There are some things within the Blackboard Connect, Class Connect, that because that's gotten modified, that doesn't work, and there are some things within D2L that don't work on it. Their language classes don't work as well, and they can't take any graphics classes on these. So if we really want to say that our kids can take, and there we go. Okay, if we really want to say that our kids can take any class at MNVA, and you could take it in the library. With journalism last year, we had kids that had to drop journalism because they couldn't get to the links on the Chrome boxes. And so the option is to go with PCs, and we can get the Minnesota Computers for Schools. That's the same computers that are down in Kyle's room. And we can get those for $225. It was brought up that at the District Tech Advisory Committee that they should have Lenovo's because that's what the kids get at MNVA. The Lenovo is a laptop. It's not really appropriate to put a laptop in a stationary room unless they're a laptop that we have them check out while they're in here and just use it in the library. But it also, the Lenovo's are $25 more, and the desktops just seem to be a better fit for a school.
So, we have a motion for the library computers.
Motion.
Motion by Joe,
No second.
second.
Yeah.
Okay, any discussion on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Student management system. We have a motion to approve student management system.
So moved.
Motion made by Gary. Second by Ron. Discussion on it. Bryn?
This is Schoology. That subcommittee has been looking, we've been looking at student management systems for years. That I did reach out to Blackboard this week and have not heard back from them for a more current quote. The Schoology quote, in looking at the different student management systems with Schoology, this is getting to be the student management system that, or the learner management system basically, that a lot of Minnesota schools are using. And because there are a lot of Minnesota schools on it, that resource link, that's something that exists with Schoology, so that a teacher teaching Minnesota history can get the resource link and see all the resources that other sixth grade teachers teaching Minnesota history have put in there. And so it ends up being like a giant professional learning community for the staff as well. In going with this, we know that there is a whole rollout system, but it provides us with an electronic place for teachers to put their curriculum. And it provides that in a way that we can more easily monitor what's going on in the classroom.
So is this something that every year they renew?
Yes,
And it's something that if you guys as a committee, since it's a change, monitor it, find out if it's the best, is it a big deal to change again?
yeah. But
I mean, I'm
it's a
just
big deal
curious.
as far as just the startup cost, because the biggest
I
cost
mean, you're looking
here
at
is that,
13.5-ish, Rob? The 5,500?
is the implementation.
Yeah.
The 5,500 is what it would take to start it up. And then,
And you've talked to the teachers and all the people involved, and this is something that they prefer to utilize.
yeah,
So were they all given a choice of different learning management systems, or were there just some that said, I'm familiar with this? I mean, how many, like, what are the numbers? What are the metrics we're looking at when teachers have said, we want this?
and Becky would have a better handle on that one, because she was the one working with them as far as trying out different, because we tried the Schoology, just the non-enterprise, the free one. And then we looked at Google Classrooms. They were aware of Moodle, and they also had the demo of Blackboard 2 years ago. The demo of Blackboard 2 years ago did not go well. They thought it was too Moodle-ish. And so,
So what do you gain then from the free?
oh, with the enterprise,
Yeah.
and you not only have the training, you also have, you don't have access to the resources unless you pay for them.
I
And
mean, you
so,
can't utilize other schools' information.
right, you
So,
you
which
can't,
to me would be a benefit for
Yeah.
teachers.
So in the past, those areas have been locked out for our teachers, they've seen them there but can't access them.
they've seen them but can't access.
That's a good sales pitch.
All I would say, I mean, this is, Future Ready surveys indicated a willingness and a need to go to a learning management system, but this is a place where I felt frustrated that the District Advisory Technology Committee had not been part of these conversations, because we were brought in at the end to see a demo on Schoology. I have personal experience on Blackboard. They have access to sharing lessons too. So, and you know, comparing a technology bid from 2 years ago with one that's for today, the cost may have gone up in Blackboard, which would be a non-starter, but knowing the rate of change of technology, their cost might have come down significantly. So I don't really want to rehash that. I want to move forward with the learning management system. I'm willing to support this. I just have real frustration with the process that the board wasn't part of these conversations in getting there. We've had a learning management system for years. Why hasn't it been successful? We've been paying for Moodle for I don't know how many years, and Moodle and Blackboard are now, Blackboard bought Moodle. But that was a learning management system. Had the training been right and the support been right and the changes that it had, it could have had a chance of being successful, but it wasn't. So I really want this to be successful. I think you do too, but I'm frustrated that, you know, this sounds like the best new thing, and we've been throwing some money down a hole.
So how are you gonna roll this out so it's different than the mobile or we used in the past?
That's with the implementation, we're going to have a train the trainer model as far as really a boot camp for about 10 teachers, and Becky will be part of that. And then it's also setting it up so it's every PLC will be its own classroom, and so they get to know the system from a student perspective, because they get to be the student in their PLC classroom as well. So then they get to see what the student type experience is, and then they also have that assistance in putting things on there, and the principals and Becky and I will all have conversations about what is the right push to get things on there. When do we have to have, and when do they have to have? We don't want to be so directive that we end up pushing people away from it, but we also don't want to be so laissez-faire that nothing happens, because
Well, yeah.
we need to
don't-
be using this, and the parents, that I think parents would really appreciate having this type of insight. And it could take the place of assignment notebooks in elementary school, and I think there are some parents that would probably like chop up confetti and whip it around this community if they knew that their assignment notebooks were going to go the way of the dinosaur.
Well, I think the main concern is if they're gonna be offering training, provide us with training, how long is that gonna be as part of this program?
Oh,
And
that's
ensuring
the-
that all the,
That's the implementation.
I mean, how long, how much time? Is it like for the whole year? Are they gonna be here if we have issues, problems, concerns? And you're saying they're taking groups of 10 and sitting them down? I mean, you wanna have complete buy-in by every teacher in the school. And if there is an issue with a teacher or teachers that say, I don't wanna deal with that, you know, that has to be a discussion you have with that person and saying that's not really an option. Why is it that you don't like that? You know what I mean?
So what do you do like next year when you got new teachers coming in? How do you teach, are those teachers that are taught?
The new
What'd you say?
teachers coming in, one of their first questions is, what's your learner management system?
Okay,
Because that's their student teaching, they're used to putting it all. And it's our new teachers that have begged and borrowed and started those pilfering what they could from other places to try to get it to work for them the way they used to have it.
Does this one have the largest database of that or the most use statewide then? I mean, over,
No, it's growing, I think.
Schoology,
you got to play around with this, Michael?
Not Schoology, no, but they all work kind of the same. I don't wanna make it sound like Schoology isn't offering, to what I've seen, it doesn't offer anything that Blackboard doesn't also offer. Might not be at the same cost. I think all these learning management systems kind of offer the same things. Some of them are add-ons and for a fee, and it's an interface. Some of it's more user-friendly. I get the impression that for a lot of people, Schoology feels more user-friendly. Blackboard is way better now than when I started on it. And maybe that's because I've learned, but it's also because it's gotten better. When you look at market share nationally,
Yeah.
it's Moodle and Blackboard. Way
for
way-
K-12.
Oh,
Well, for education in general, and they have a K-12 market. Schoology has come in at the K-12 level
Right.
and is trying to compete for that piece of the pie, but those are also reaching down and stepping up their game. So it's a horse of a different color,
And
basically.
it's, when we're looking at other schools, when I talked about Farmington, when they kind of flip their whole curriculum and have kind of out-of-the-box scheduling. Lakeville does the same thing, Spring Grove. So Farmington is on Schoology, Lakeville's on Schoology, Spring Grove's on Schoology. When we're going to those schools that are really doing kind of, not that Spring Grove, well, Spring Grove's doing some innovative things, but when we're really looking at some of those innovative schools, they're all on Schoology.
But, you know, our students are not gonna go from here to another public high school. They're gonna go from here to a college. And D2L and Blackboard are way bigger at the college level. But again, it's just a learning management system. I don't really wanna fight that. But I mean, giving them Schoology because another high school has Schoology doesn't mean that when they go to their 4-year institution or their 2-year institution, they're gonna get Schoology. Maybe they will.
At their college, they probably won't get Schoology.
Right, so, I mean, again, that would have just been another factor, would have been part of the conversation in making the choice.
Is it hard to jump from one to the other?
It's just costly. I
Costly.
mean, if we're
Costly.
making,
If
we're making the commitment now, we need to go forward with what's being recommended, I think.
I'm just, you know, if you say that they're, you know, in college, they're using Blackboard, is that, and they start here with Schoology, is that a big
No, it's like-
transition?
No, it's like Corinne said, once a student learns how these systems work,
They're
they
all
can
pretty much the
probably
same.
navigate things pretty well.
The
I
learning
think
curve is
the
more
end-
for the instructor.
I think it would be just nice to monitor, because I think, looking back, you know, what we used in the past, I don't think it was monitored properly or utilized properly. And I think, you know, like Michaeline said, maybe we were throwing money down a hole and nobody was making sure that that was being utilized properly, or it was not enforced. And I hate to say it that way, but at the same time, you kind of have to say these, you know, these are the books you're gonna use to teach science. You're not gonna use the ones that you have at home. You know, that's what I'm saying. So if a teacher comes on board, they need to understand, this is what you're using. And if the teacher has a question or concern about it and feels like they don't have to use it, that needs to be discussion. Because there's a reason the school's investing time and money into these programs. And, you know, I think in the past, we may not have looked at it that way. So, I think we just, again, going back to this technology committee and stuff, we just need to have regular updates to see where we're at with Schoology, how many teachers are on board, utilizing it, is it working efficiently, all that. You know, so we, as a board, and again, that can filter through the committee or the, you know, to let us know, just like we do with other things. Hey, you know, we just started this, we've started so many teachers, this is what the feedback we're getting, it's working good. Because we're putting this money into it, as a board, we should make sure we're getting our money out of it. And if there's an issue with the training, and they're not giving us what we feel we should be getting, then that should be a discussion with Schoology, hey, why not? And let these teachers know that, you know, what you're telling us, there's access to other teachers' information. You know, that should be part of the discussion, so the teachers are utilizing a teacher in another district looking at that, saying, hey, maybe Michaeline in another district knows something different than I know. There's a better way of teaching something, where we can learn from each other. So those types of things, I think we need to make sure are being communicated.
You said something about monitoring how many teachers are using it. Isn't it a given that everybody's using it?
Well, I get this feeling that in the past, that with Moodle and these other programs that we've had, it's kind of been like a free-for-all. You want to use it, go ahead, use it. If you don't, there's
Well,
not
what
been
do they
any.
do if they don't use it?
Well, that's.
We're paying for it.
We're paying for it, but I'm getting at. That's where I think, is what I'm saying, Ron, is as the administrators of the
Well, if some people are getting
school.
along without it, why do we need it?
Well, I think with the
We need to
future
have the
ready
program, but we
surveys,
need to make sure we're utilizing
it's
the
pretty
program.
widespread agreement that
Yeah.
we needed to move into this world. We just need to do it with more
Finesse.
more
Gusto.
direction and more gusto
Right.
and more accountability.
Right, so,
Well, I just can't figure out why
well,
teachers would be allowed not to use it if it's
Well, they're
part
face
of
to
the whole
face.
system.
Well, don't get me started.
no. So, let's continue on. Any other questions on the student management system? So we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Painting the elementary ceiling. I gotta leave in a couple minutes here. Okay. So, we have a motion to approve the painting of the elementary ceiling.
Motion.
And a motion by Ron,
Second?
second. Discussion? When's it gonna be done?
Before
Yeah, first week in August.
Well, I got a
Or
couple
actually, he could start Monday.
So this was from a grant, right?
The 40 gallons of paint is from the
Paint was,
grant,
but not all
the-
the work.
The labor.
not the labor. And the reason that we went out for a quote on this is when we talked to the board about it, the board didn't feel comfortable having any of our employees up on scaffolding painting. And so I was asked to find a quote from someone else that would paint. And I didn't think that that was gonna be the toughest part of the request. But finding a painter who was willing to do ceilings, ended up, we found LLC,
Or they-
LLJ,
or
LLJ.
LLJ.
Okay.
painting,
yes.
LLC.
So what's the total
Yeah.
bill here?
The total bill here is $12,400 for the second floor and $7,550 for the first floor. The reason the second floor is more, there are some water damage spots of water damage that had happened before we had replaced the roof. And I'm not sure how many years
Well,
that it's been there, because the ceiling only has one coat of paint on it, and that was in 1939.
well, my question is $20,000, right?
Mhm.
Does it need painting that bad?
It's after we did the asbestos abatement, there are some parts that are just
Bare.
concrete. And so there are some parts where the paint got sanded off, in order to do the new lights.
So
and
if
in
we
order-
just did those places, would that be 20,000 worth? That's what I'm asking. I
Except,
mean, is it, what I'm saying as an outside person looking at this, I got free paint, but it cost me 20,000 to put it on. That's what I'm saying.
and we also knew that we were going to have to paint once that whole project was done.
So
Is there
again,
money
is
in
it
that
covering the
project money at
whole-
all?
Yes, yeah, it would come from that.
It would come out of the project money that we had for the original project to do the painting.
Now, how much does that cover?
There was 41,000 left.
I'm still working on that. I'm coming up with much more than that left over.
UNESCO felt there was 41,000 left. Gwen thinks there's more than that. I like Gwen's ideas better.
Kinda just, I mean, it seems
I
like a
just
lot of
seemed
money.
like, we got the free grant, but is it worth the money to throw that paint on and to do it all, is it?
I'm not asking to do it all this year. That's why I've got it broken into second floor, first floor. My reasoning for putting second floor first this year is because there are some water spots and there has been some water damage, I would like that painted now so we can watch over the winter and make sure that there's not any new water spots or new water damage. Because then if there's some new spots or new damage, then we know, hold on a second, there's something we need to fix. If we don't do it, then we can't really see, okay, is that an old spot or a new spot?
Can we keep that money, Gwen, till next year? Is that money just me?
Spend it within 3 years.
Okay.
So, and Gary, you guys have seen this area?
No,
I don't remember.
We haven't walked through there.
When you walked through, since we did it, I don't know if you looked up at the ceiling and saw the bare concrete.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what-
right,
that's
yeah,
what we're talking about, is
Right.
the bare concrete.
yeah. It has to be done. I mean,
So
and
we
if it
need-
lasts as long as the first coat of paint,
No guarantees, no guarantees on that one.
So we only got one quote on it too?
What,
Two coats
and
on
which
top.
is why asbestos abatement went so stinking well,
it'd
they
be
were
2 coats.
expecting it to take a lot longer, they were expecting it to be more.
is there?
And they got done and said, do you realize you only have 1 coat of paint up there?
I did he
I'm gonna-
make a estimation of how many gallons total he think will be needed? Like how far is our 40 gallons gonna go? Any idea, did he have any?
Well,
idea?
with the 2 coats, he was estimating,
Yeah.
um,
Oh, yeah.
what was it, 6 gallons per room, but if it takes 2, then that was 12 gallons per room. So for the upstairs, it was going to be about 12 gallons per room, so that means that we get about 3.5 of the rooms upstairs done with the 40 gallons of paint.
So then in the future, we'd be buying paint too.
That's all part of this, and so that's why, if you're approving this, to make sure we get the, kind of the bang for the buck, you're approving,
Oh, he's included the cost of the paint in this?
right,
Oh, okay.
he's included the cost of
Right.
the paint in this, so that's why I'm asking for approval, for the 2-year paint project. So if if you could approve it,
Through completion.
right, through completion. So that means that
I
he's,
think that was Ron's motion.
yes, I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
So it would
And
be
your
that,
second?
Yep,
okay,
Michelangelo.
so it would be that he would know that he would put us in his schedule right now for next summer.
Yeah.
And for those people that wondered why we went to Rushford to find a painter, we asked those painters that are in Houston and the painters that we've used in the past. And they just said, we don't have time, we are so swamped, we can't give you any kind of quote, because we can't do it this summer.
Any more discussion?
I don't wanna do it.
Pardon?
I don't wanna do it.
Oh, gee. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Policies for second reading.
Motion to approve policy 520, student surveys.
Second.
Any discussion?
The only discussion is with the public notice form.
Well, that's a second item, isn't
Yeah,
it?
right.
So I'm just,
Right. It's just the student surveys don't necessarily have to have that public notice form with them. They require a public notice, but they don't require the form. But this is a mandatory policy.
okay, but, so the public notice form that is uploaded into the website is a public notice that goes with policy 515. So that was my confusion. This policy that we're looking at here is not the policy form for policy 520. This is a form for a different
We
policy.
talked about this last month. Deja vu.
Oh,
Did I grab the wrong one? I
yeah,
mean, it was the only one I followed.
No, there are two,
Ah.
there are two public, I'm sorry, I wasn't clear when I contacted you, Corinne, on this. So there's this one public notice form, that one goes to policy 515, which is protection, which is student, public, and private data.
Right,
And this one talks about what you can review there and what's directory information and all of that. And it's a public notice, and then at the bottom of this public notice, we have to choose some language, which we haven't
right. And that,
which we haven't done. So
there is a separate one for policy 520,
so
yeah.
my motion is to the policy 520,
Not to
and
the
then
server.
my suggestion is gonna be to set the public notice form to table it until the next meeting, until we get that sorted out, cause I'm confused. And now you think we don't need that form?
Don't use their.
No, because in talking to the principals, the form talks about an annual notice that sometimes surveys are given, and then you have to list in that form when you think surveys are going to be given. And what has been the standard operating procedure in all three of the buildings, if a survey is going to be given, we always send an email to the parents a couple of weeks ahead of time with what the survey is, who's conducting it, and how the parent can opt out. And so we do the notice as the surveys are coming, instead of one blanket notice at the beginning of the year. And I feel that that's a much better way to handle it.
Okay,
So do we need a
You take that
motion to
off.
table public notice form?
No, we're just gonna
Just
work
work
on.
on policy.
We're just
right
gonna
now.
remove that, okay. Okay, so the motion is for policy 520,
Right.
correct.
okay. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. New business, items for discussion and approval, 2017 literacy plan.
This does require,
Just requires
Approval.
approval? Okay. Is there a motion?
Are there any changes to it?
Yeah, any changes from,
yes, the changes, the only changes deal with what we're using as a screening tool. So we are no longer using AimsWeb, we no longer use NWEA at the on-site schools, we no longer use Scantron at the online schools. What we are using instead in kindergarten through grade 3 is FastBridge. So we're using FastBridge for math, we're using FastBridge for reading, we're using FastBridge for fluency and comprehension. And so that covers all of those areas that originally were assessed by AimsWeb, NWEA, and Scantron. So that's the only update, is removing the assessment type.
Did somebody make a motion on this?
No, not yet.
A motion to approve the literacy
I'll
plan.
second it.
Okay. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 10-year plan.
We need to have our 10-year plan approved annually, which to me isn't a 10-year plan, but if we're gonna get long-term facility maintenance money, we need to annually submit our 10-year plan. And so we have to redo our 10-year plan every year. Gwen and I have gone through this. Most of this will be, as far as it's the second page with the expenditures. Those expenditures are dealing with the expenditures for the long-term facility maintenance that we did. You'll notice that when you look at the revenue and the expenditures, it looks like we have overspent in 2017 from the expenditures to the revenue. However, if you look in the health and safety projects costing over $100,000 per site, we've got asbestos removal and encapsulation at $250,000. It's because in our 10-year plan that was approved, last year, or when that got put in, that the asbestos removal hadn't gotten,
Fireworks.
okay, the asbestos removal hadn't gotten put in there correctly, and so Dale Sunshine at MDE had us put it in 2017, because it wasn't in the 2016, because when that got filed. So,
And is this something that has to be approved tonight?
yeah.
Okay.
Looked like year nine was a little sketchy.
What? I just think, it goes to 2026.
That's
and
what I'm
to me
saying,
that-
after the first 2 to 3 years.
What different?
Yeah. That was my
It'll
joke.
be all different by then.
I like it.
But you'll notice that in some of the revenue that we've added in there, I do have for 2019, the possibility of the asbestos abatement of the flooring in the high school. That doesn't mean we have to do it, but it's there as a placeholder. For the 2018 school year, I do have also for the mechanical systems, you'll see that there was a bump up. This year, we had 52,000 in there, next year it's 87. That's because next year, we have to flush the antifreeze out of our system here because it's breaking down and it's no longer going to keep the system from freezing. So therefore, that's a $25,000 expense that I put in here. So I tried to look at where we have those expenses as far as the flooring for the preschool, that's in here. Looking at some of those other expenses that we've had this year, expenses that I know we're going to have next year, that's all ready in here.
Is this something that would, in terms of board inclusion, be finance committee or facility committee?
Facility committee.
And so when you're, thinking about putting those things in, maybe that before this plan comes up for another renewal, the facility committee could sit down and have a chance to look at it.
The facility committee has approved all those things that we put in for 2017. It was just putting them in the form. As far as the, like the flooring for the preschool, the facility committee already approved that because that was necessary with the underground dewatering. As far as the breakdown for the antifreeze, that was something that just came up this last week. So I haven't had a chance to meet with the facility committee yet.
Any more
But
questions?
it's in the facility committee folder.
Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Approval of second quarter board pay?
Motion.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Policies for first reading.
Just look them over. These are the ones that are on every August, I think. Yeah.
There are quite a few changes on
Yes.
these. I started looking at them based on conversation. Corinne had said they have a lot of changes, so I looked at them. We had a brief conversation about making sure this is all in the series that has to do with educational programs. And so they have to do with, I wanted to make sure that the principals are aware of any changes that they're probably following all them, but they should be aware of the new language anyway. But many of these, or at least policy 616, this makes me start thinking about World's Best Workforce and the report that we need to be getting ready for, along with the literacy plan. And so at some point, maybe upcoming agenda items, I wanted to know what your thoughts are and where we're going with that.
Yes.
So anyway, take a look at these. If you would.
Okay, announcements.
MSBA Summer Seminar registration, so August 7th. Going once?
Tuesday, is it?
Monday. Monday.
Who's going?
There's one person.
I'm going.
I thought there was one board member.
One board member
who said they couldn't go,
go.
that was me, or
Oh.
at least
And
I.
so far,
yes,
there was
maybe
one
couldn't
board
go.
member that said couldn't go, and 6 board members who so far have been,
I'm on
Wow.
vacation
Mom,
Better on a Saturday.
you're out,
officially.
okay.
When is the cutoff for MREA, registration?
MREA registration, early bird goes through August 4th.
Ooh,
Um,
Coming right up.
We encourage you to register early. Last year's conference was sold out. And that's the conference is going to be, I don't see on here where, I think it's October 3rd if I remember correctly.
no, it's in November usually, isn't it?
Or is it November 3rd?
It usually bumps up on deer
It'd be
hunting.
nice if they put it in the announcement.
Well, yeah, it's just, I'm not seeing,
This is what I got off
This
their
is the one
website, we
that
haven't really gotten a
is
formal
good to
mailing
attend,
on
isn't
it.
It is, but it's a several day, it's up in Bemidji or Brainerd.
Brainer usually.
Yeah.
It was how I could-
And then the MSBA one is in January. That one, this one comes at a cost. The MSBA Leadership Conference is no cost, because the cost is in our membership. But this one does cost
Do
some.
they do that on the weekend?
This one?
No.
Well, if you add a teacher to your school group of 3 people and you pay only $125 for this 4th member, so it's got $125, it's gotta be cheaper than what you pay for the other 3 people.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and I, in this, I'm not seeing what,
Yeah, it wasn't a very,
Anything else on
A
that?
week or two to worry about it. Got a couple of weeks to worry about it.
well, if we want the early bird, August 4th, that's, yeah, it is a couple weeks. It'll be right the day after our next board meeting.
Okay.
Finally.
No.
Yeah. And I will try to get more information on that.
Okay, meeting and committee updates.
We're trying to schedule negotiations. I'm trying to get dates. And
Who's on the committee for them, for the teachers?
for teachers,
Kyle.
Kyle Kaler, Dean Sensala, and Marty Momsen
Kane.
are the 3 that I know of.
So Jason's not on this.
I have not heard Jason's name yet.
Okay.
That's not to say that he's not still on the group or not. But I know Dean, Marty, and Kyle.
Okay.
And then from our group, it's the corner,
Yeah.
Ron, Joe, Tom.
Like I said, I'm only gone that week of the 8th or whatever, and that's it. So,
Okay,
The MREA is November 12th to
okay,
14th.
thank you.
And I can't see what it costs, but.
Okay, board superintendent feedback, thank yous. Anything?
I just, future agenda items.
World's Best Workforce District Advisory Committee, I mean, I think that report is due in October or November. But usually there's, I don't know if there's been changes at the state level on that form, but there's usually a few conversations we have about it before we pull that together.
Yep. So, and I haven't gotten anything in the updates that usually I get a superintendent update and I was like, oh, that's right.
Anything else?
No.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Alright.
Meeting's adjourned.
No signage?
nope, just that one before.